Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Anna Maria De Bartolo. I work at the University of Calabria, Italy, in the Department of Culture, Education and Society, where I teach English as a second language. And the title of my presentation is Exploring Learners' Attitudes Towards Intercultural Communication, a Case Study. So I'm going to briefly describe the outline of my presentation. So the background to the study, theoretical framework, the study itself, the methodology, the research design, some preliminary findings and final considerations. So the background to the study has explored students' attitudes, students' perceptions towards culture and intercultural communication through English as a lingua franca health. It is a follow-up of a previous study, which has explored and analyzed international students' perceptions, international students studying at the University of Calabria, and the previous study has been conducted in the year 2019, 2020. Therefore, it was decided to expand the analysis with a larger sample to identify similarities and differences between two different groups. And the aim was to gather further insights into the factors which affect intercultural communication and the extent to which culture impacts on intercultural communication. The relationship between culture and language has been extensively explored by researchers, by different scholars, among which researcher. She argues that cultures and languages can be separated, though culture and language are closely linked, as human language is always embedded in culture. A particular language is not necessarily linked to a particular culture. She argues that cultures and languages can be separated. There is nothing inherent in the language itself that carries cultural baggage or cultural scripts. Has research into global Englishes and health has shown there is a huge variety in the way English is used and the cultural scripts through which English linguistic forms operate. Particularly relevant in the light of our discussion is the idea of culture as connected to transcultural flows. According to this view, cultural and linguistic practices are in a constant flow, moving from one context to another, cutting across and through nationally defined cultures, and drawing on multiple linguistic and cultural resources, which are constantly adapted and changed in the process. Kanagraja highlights the relevance of translocal spaces and translingual practices, which characterize plurilingual communicative practices. In this context, norms of communication are not well defined and established. Rather, they are open to change, negotiation, and mediation. Language is thus viewed as a complex, adaptive system which emerges bottom up from interaction of multiple agents in speech communities, rather than a static system composed of top-down grammatical rules or principles. Therefore, culture and language are viewed as nested systems, systems within systems, which mutually co-evolve, with each influencing and adapting to the other, and with the boundaries between them as fuzzy and blurred. This approach has informed the present study, which has attempted to explore the relationship between language and culture from a intercultural perspective, drawing particularly on the concept of linguistic and cultural flows which emerge as a result of negotiation and change and adaptation from the perspective of learners. So the study has investigated two groups of learners, two groups of participants. The first group is made up of 168 respondents belonging to different linguistic and cultural backgrounds. They were studying at the University of Calabria. They were international students studying at the University of Calabria, Italy. 153 were non-native English speakers and only 15 native English speakers. The second group is composed of 58 respondents belonging to target language environments. So one American university and one Canadian university, Loyola University Chicago and University of Alberta, Canada. 40 of them stated to be native English speakers and 18 stated to be non-native English speakers. The online questionnaire was composed and used as a research instrument to collect quantitative data from the participants, and the link was emailed to the lecturers in this particular university, who forwarded the online link to their students, to the students who participated, who accepted to participate in the study. So the methodology is a questionnaire, an online questionnaire, and was made up of 3 sections. The first section of the questionnaire is a preliminary section, which identifies students' language backgrounds. So they were asked to indicate whether they were native English speaker or non-native English speakers. In case they stated to be native English speakers, they were asked to specify which variety of English they used, either a native variety, British American English, or a non-native variety of English, such as Indian, Singapore English, African English, Malaysian, Caribbean, etc. While the second section includes 9 items aimed at investigating students' awareness of the relation between language and culture. And these are the statements. Culture and language are closely linked. Language is culture. Language represents a specific culture with its word use, values, and beliefs. English language is linked to English culture only. Cultures and specific languages can be separated. For example, the English language can be separated from British culture. In multicultural settings, negotiation strategies, confirmation checks, clarification requests, paraphrasing, repetitions, code mixing, and so on contribute to achieve effective communication in English. English used in multicultural settings enables speakers to share their different cultures. In order to communicate effectively, it is important to understand the influence of culture on communication. And in order to communicate effectively, it is necessary to know the culture of the people you are communicating with. And this questionnaire has been adapted from Baker's study to 2015. So the survey was anonymous, so it was meant to ensure anonymity. So students did not feel any pressure when reporting their answers. They were required to record their responses on a 5-point Likert scale, ranging from 1, strongly disagree, to 5, strongly agree. Then there was the third and final section, which includes 6 items, which specifically address the factors that may facilitate successful intercultural communication in students' opinion. Okay, and these are the final statements: knowing about the way other non-native English speakers use English, knowing about the culture of the non-native English speakers you are communicating with, knowing about the culture of native English-speaking countries, having a native-like pronunciation using correct native-like grammar, knowing about the relationship between language and culture. We know that American and Canadian universities are known to promote globalization and welcome staff professionals who are non-native English speakers. For many students, classes at universities are their first major exposure to people from other countries, to non-native English speech. Studies suggest that there is a positive correlation between students' attitudes towards non-native English speech and pronunciation as well, and their familiarity to it. So the purpose of the present study is to investigate whether this is true in this particular case. So whether higher exposure to non-native varieties of English and more direct involvement in multicultural academic communities where English is not only the main means of academic instruction, but also the main medium of communication, may lead to more or less positive attitudes towards intercultural communication. So the hypothesis is the second group of students. The second group is more exposed to multicultural context, to non-native speech, and therefore more aware of issues affecting successful intercultural communication, more willing to accommodate intercultural misunderstandings. So this was the hypothesis. Okay, moving on to the analysis. So the analysis of the questionnaire was conducted using SPSS version 26, which included descriptive statistics, tabulation responses, percentages, and mean scores. However, before going into the analysis and into the interpretation of the data, the limitations of the study should be highlighted. The analysis and findings do not aim to be comprehensive or to draw any definite conclusion at the present stage, having relied on statistical procedures exclusively. Therefore, a mixed method approach may corroborate the findings and may provide further insights and further clarifications. At the present stage, the analysis has investigated comparison of mean scores in the two sample groups to identify similarities or differences between learners' responses in terms of attitudes. Being the sum of the sample considered larger than 100, a two-tailed normal distribution Z was applied and statistically significant differences observed. Okay, this is the first table, the means calculated for the 15 variables in the two groups. Okay, this is the second table, the two-tailed normal distribution calculated for the 15 variables in the two groups. So analysis and results, factors affecting intercultural communication. We may say that in particular, three questions. Question 10, knowing about the way other non-native English speakers use English. 11, knowing about the culture of the non-native English speakers you are communicating with. And question 9, in order to communicate effectively, it is necessary to know the culture of the people you are communicating with. Present higher mean scores in the second group with statistical significant differences observed. These results may suggest participants from group 2 positive attitudes towards their interlocutors, different cultures, and the crucial role cultures plays on communication. This idea is reinforced. In question 1, culture and language are closely linked with higher mean scores in group 2 and statistical significant difference observed. Respondents from group 2 seem to show higher tolerance of the way non-native speakers use English in interaction, which is likely to be considered an important factor to achieve communication. Analysis and results, again, culture and language. Question 3, a language represents a specific culture with its word views, values, and beliefs, presents, on the contrary, higher mean scores in the first group with statistical significant difference observed. We may highlight that students who have less opportunities to experience a real health communicative context are more likely to view languages as attached to specific national cultures which reflect those values and beliefs. I think the idea of languages as crossing borders and transcending well-defined cultures is not revealed in group 1 responses, while empirical studies have largely highlighted that English as a lingua franca is hybrid and territorialized, health transcends national borders and draws on cultural flows and multiple linguistic resources that are modified and recreated during interaction. Participants from group 1 seem to be more aware that negotiation strategies used to achieve mutual understanding are helpful to negotiate meaningful intercultural interaction, on the contrary, and that English use in multicultural settings enables speakers to share their different cultures. In this particular question, a significant difference is also revealed from the analysis. Finally, significant differences are also observed in question 14, using correct native-like grammar, which presents slightly higher mean scores in the first group, and question 18, having a native-like pronunciation, which also reveals higher scores in the first group, though no statistical significance is observed in this particular question. We may suggest the students from group 2 who are likely to be more familiar with health environments do not seem to consider the use of standard British American grammar or standard native pronunciation a relevant factor in facilitating intercultural communication. Question 4, English language is linked to English culture only, presents slightly higher mean scores in group 1, with also statistical significant difference observed. And we may suggest that reduced learners' exposure to English in multicultural settings may lead to a lower awareness of the diversity of English, its connection with a variety of cultural settings which transcend the British borders. In conclusion, we may highlight the results, even though they are partial, they are tentative, suggest that culture and language play an important role in enhancing intercultural communication. The data highlight that engaging with different cultures and different varieties of English may contribute to successful intercultural communication. So students living and studying in real life context, where English is the lingua franca for intercultural communication, seem to be more aware of non-native English use in intercultural communication, more willing to accept and embrace different forms of English. Pedagogical considerations. We may say that studying how learners perceive intercultural communication issues, so studying learners' attitudes towards intercultural communication issues, may also raise language teachers' awareness of the need to incorporate intercultural communication within their curriculum, within their syllabus. Intercultural communication, which is often relegated to a fifth and last skill after the other 4, listening, reading, writing, and speaking, have been covered. Embracing intercultural communication in the language classroom may open students new doors, may encourage them to enlarge their perspectives and experiment what communication actually entails in the multifaceted English world, where cultural diversity and unconventional language norms allow for new encounters and deeper understanding. Therefore, intercultural communication should have a fundamental role in the language classroom, as health studies have largely demonstrated the majority of interaction through English occur among non-native English speakers, who, by sharing their different cultures, successfully communicate their message across. So I think it will be essential to provide our learners with a realistic and meaningful communicative model with the necessary competence to function in diverse and changing cultural contexts, which most of the time are far removed from the standard native speaker model teaching materials present. Okay, so this is the reference used. And thank you very much for your attention.